Hello everyone, my name is Nick Infernus and welcome back to another comic book review. And today we are looking at a weird one. Yeah, not so often that I talk about weird movies. Done the Deadpool movies, I've done Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, they were pretty weird, but today we are talking about Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn. Okay, I guess that didn't really need to be said on one breath, but yeah, that title is weird and so is this movie. This is the kind of movie where you'd see one of those polls that Perspective N puts in his community tab where it's like, how will I feel about a figure? Love it, hate it, it's weird, mixed, micro masterpiece. If this feels like the kind of movie where it's weird would get the most votes, or at least it's weird would be the outcome for me. Because, yeah, this movie, weird as hell. Then again, Harley Quinn's the narrator. What do you expect? Of course, it's going to be weird and wacky and crazy and all over the place. And if I'm being completely honest, this isn't just weird, it's weirdly mixed. So, what's good? Well, for one, it's R-rated, so of course R-rated isn't an objectively positive thing, but it does allow for the action to be a lot more brutal and exciting with a lot of the things they're able to do. They're able to, show blood a lot. I believe there are like 4 broken legs in the entire thing, and it's a lot more visceral than what we'd expect from comic book movies, especially DC comic book movies. I think the only other R-rated movie in the franchise at this point was Batman v Superman, and I don't think that one was even that brutal outside of the Doomsday fight. Like even the fight between Batman and Superman, it was kind of subdued just because, Bruce had the kryptonite on his side. But here they're able to much more take advantage of that R rating with all the brutal, bloody carnage that they get into. Okay, well, carnage might not be the right word, but you get what I mean. And it's something that I'm sure carries over into the Suicide Squad, which I haven't seen yet, but I will eventually get to. And at the same time, I love that this is a movie that has an unreliable narrator. Thor: Love and Thunder technically does this too, but here it's much more obvious with stuff, rewinding, fast forwarding, and doing all sorts of these little I guess if anything, this movie probably had a pretty decent, you know, was probably a pretty good inspiration for some of the summer 2022 Phase 4 projects because it kind of has the drawn on visuals that Miss Marvel kind of has. And then it also has the unreliable narrator of Thor: Love and Thunder, even though it wasn't as obvious in that movie, which I will get to. Yep. But of course, Harley's telling it. It's unreliable. Stuff is exaggerated, and it makes for an at least decently enjoyable experience for a movie that, for the most part, just wasn't interesting, at least to me. So in general, I think the biggest thing that Thor: Love and Thunder did better than this in terms of having an unreliable narrator is that the story by itself is at least interesting. The story of this group of Asgardian heroes going to stop this god butcher and needing to go to several different locations in order to do so. Here, it's kind of bunch of just a bunch of characters, 2 of which turn out to be metahumans or at least one of which who turns out to be a metahuman. I don't know if Harley Quinn counts as a metahuman or not, but I'm willing to bet money that Black Canary definitely counts as one. Just a bunch of people stopping a mob boss. Which I'm sure there's an audience for that since it is a more street level story. But I don't really find this to be a very engaging street level story, mainly because the characters in of themselves just aren't interesting, or at least that interesting. The only really interesting characters here are just Harley Quinn and the villain Black Mask. Of course, Harley, this character who wants to be her own independent woman after being seen as Joker's side gal for so long, and Black Mask just being this over the top, eccentric, profane mob boss who has a lot of power in Gotham. Then again, that over the top, eccentric profaneness could just be part of Harley's storytelling, but that's the fun of the movie, so can't complain. But outside of those two, I can't really profess much of a care for the rest of them. Like with I guess Cass is pretty fun, but with Montoya, Huntress, and Black Canary, one of them's pretty fun. Another one just kind of got on my nerves a little bit. Like Black Canary has a fun personality. Montoya just got on my nerves a little bit, and Huntress is just a last minute nothing character with a backstory. That's the best way I can describe her. She is the prime example of nothing characters with backstories. Because she just shows up just before the third act, and turns out she's related to the huge mob scenario where with the MacGuffin diamond of the movie, and as it turns out, she's part of that bloodline, so of course, bring her in. And on top of that, there's just a lot of moments where it felt kind of awkward with the portrayal of certain characters. I think mainly Zaz, I think her name, her, shit. I think his name was Black Mask's right hand. I forget what his name is, but in general, he was kind of awkward. A lot of characters feel like they have that slightly awkward edge to it, and especially the way that, well, I was just about to say the same thing twice, but you get the picture. There's just some stuff in here that felt a little bit awkward to me. Now, don't let all that complaining confuse any of you, because this is still, well, what I should say is don't let all of those criticisms drive you away from the movie, because this is one that I'd still give a watched at least once to say you did, and who knows, maybe you might end up liking it more than I did, because overall, this movie's fine. It's a solid 2 out of 5. It's got a fun storytelling style, and it has some really brutal action, but it's just the lack of intrigue is what drags it down for me. Not bad. It certainly could have been worse. It could have been boring like Suicide Squad. But in general, I still find that this is one of my lesser favorite DCEU films, at least. But I mean, hey, your mileage may vary. You might get more out of this than I did. At least to me, it's okay. But anyways, guys, that's going to be it for this review of that stupidly long-titled movie. If you enjoyed, you know what to do. I'm not going to bore you with all that generic crap. I'll see y'all next time. Take care, and Godspeed.